When you think about a good story, it's something that is going to connect, whether it's emotionally, mentally, spiritually, something that's compelling you to then do whatever it is the piece is supposed to be compelling you to do. And that's from our perspective because we're always working on things that are missionally driven. So we want people to feel inspired, to take action, to advocate, to connect with others. That's when we know something has done well.
Hello, and welcome to More Than Sunday, a weekly podcast where we take a deeper dive into the stories, themes, and questions of our faith. My name is Eric Chakowski. I'm one of the worship directors here at First United Methodist Church Richardson, and with me every week is one of our associate pastors, Josh Fitzpatrick.
Hey, Eric, usually I say it's good to be with you, and even though we are together, it's a little bit different this week. We are both in our homes. This is our very first attempt at recording the podcast, at least this introductory part, from home. As we all know, COVID-19 has kind of thrown us all for a loop, and we're getting used to the new reality, if you will. And so part of that new reality is taking advantage of this opportunity of recording from our own houses. So how are you guys holding up there?
We're doing okay. This was day one where the schools were supposed to be back in session, and so we're online. And Carson isn't officially in Richardson schools, but he's in the preschool at First United Methodist Richardson. And so we are trying to keep up with some of their encouragements for education and those sorts of things. And I'm trying to work full-time, and my wife, Val, is a full-time student going back to school for a career change. And so she's trying to be in all of her online classes and just trying to manage the new normal. So what about you guys?
I think the new normal is a good word. Today was that first, like you said, it's kind of the reality check. Have the 3 kids at home, and we are, working full-time and now schooling full-time. And went to the school and picked up the iPad that Richardson Independent School District has for all their kids. So we got to pick up Emily's iPad, which she was excited to have at home. And we got the list of curriculum and exactly like you said, getting used to the new normal.
So here we are. It is evening time. We are starting to get kids down to bed, but we hope you'll have some grace for us. If you hear kids in the background, again, I think I saw a BBC interview recently where a kid wandered into it as someone was doing a report on the BBC. And so we are all living it right now, as Josh said. So
that's right.
But we are really excited about our conversation today. Before all of this started happening, we were able to sit and interview a really incredible guest who does a lot of work with nonprofits, and we're excited to have a conversation with the CEO of Minerva Consulting, Ashley Elsey. We are here with Ashley Elsey, the president and CEO of Minerva Consulting. Ashley, it's a pleasure to welcome you to the podcast. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
Absolutely. So you are a member of the church here, but we realize some of our listeners have not met you. So would you mind telling us just a little bit about your background and maybe where you're originally from and how you found your way to Richardson?
Sure. I have lived in Richardson for nearly 20 years, was a member of a different church and had younger kids and was really looking to redefine what I considered church and what kind of church we wanted to be a part of. And I had heard so many great things about First United Methodist Church Richardson. So we came and visited with my kids and was a place where you really saw people being the hands and feet of Christ. And so that's what drew us here. And then there are a lot of members of church here that I have great respect for and love dearly that just sort of welcomed us with open arms.
So you're the president and CEO of Minerva Consulting, which is more than just a marketing company. Would you mind telling us what exactly Minerva does and what it took to get there?
Sure. So Minerva Consulting was founded by me in 2003. I was leaving Verizon, where I had launched a bunch of cause-related marketing campaigns, but I was also a new mother. And I really felt that there was a way to do life differently and still have a meaningful career, but also figure out how to integrate my family and my children into my work life. So that was really sort of what sprang Minerva into existence, was just this sort of desire to combine all of those things together and live a more integrated life. Minerva is a communications consulting firm. We are based in Dallas, but we have offices in LA and New York. Our goal is to help bring out the soul of our clients. So we work with for-profit and not-for-profit companies, helping to think through their communications, how they're trying to talk about themselves, putting together the strategy around that, and then helping to execute it. So that means we're doing videos, social media, public relations, events, large-scale campaigns, anything that's going to help articulate and compel people around the mission of whatever our client is going for.
I love that you talk about the soul of an organization. A lot of times we probably view organizations as these sort of entities, and the work that you do sounds like it really kind of brings out the humanity in a particular organization and helps sort of focus the messaging around that. So you mentioned not-for-profits. You've obviously done a lot of work with not-for-profits. We are in the midst of our year of service here at the church, and so one of the reasons we were so interested in having a conversation with you is because of the work that you do with nonprofits. Would you tell us a little bit about what makes that work so compelling or interesting for you?
Well, at Minerva, we have the privilege of working with both for-profit and not-for-profits and have just organically connected with organizations who are working towards causes greater than themselves, whatever those are. It is so inspiring to see sort of the best of people working so passionately around issues like homelessness, children, trafficking, people who are really here to serve others. And so when you're thinking about your own personal work, and it's very easy to think about how can I use my work and my skills to help raise up others who are also trying to do that. So the nonprofit community that we get to work with, I can't even fully articulate the power of each of these people and what they're doing. We work with organizations, obviously, from homelessness to trafficking to children who are also facing homelessness or parents of addicts, to higher education, to equity. How can we make this world a more equitable place? And all of those organizations and all the people behind those organizations are working tirelessly. We hear stories in every meeting about the impact of their work, whether it's a child who finally graduates or it's a woman who's been saved from trafficking and is finding a new way for herself and for her children. All of those things help you stay really motivated on wanting to do your best possible work and also feeling a real power behind your work to know that this is important. Like, these aren't just selling something for the sake of selling something. This is work that is meaningful, and there are people on the other end who need this help. And so sharing that with as many people as possible to make sure that those people get the support and the encouragement that they need is not hard, and frankly is what helps all of us at Minerva get up every day.
Now, I can imagine that it's easier to draw out the soul of a nonprofit organization, but I would imagine it's a little more difficult to go through that process with a for-profit company. I can just picture a scenario where maybe the CEO of the company comes to you and says, okay, this is what we want. And if your goal is to draw out the soul of that company, maybe they've never thought about that before, what does that process look like?
So fundamentally, I believe everyone wants to be inspired.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is sort of the basis for why Minerva exists. And given that, it's so a critical piece of our process to get to what's underneath whatever they're saying. And I would tell you that both for-profits and not-for-profits want to talk about the soul of what's driving their work. And sometimes they are tactically speaking about the actions of what they're doing every single day, even nonprofits and also businesses. And it's listening to the words that they're choosing. It's listening to their body language and understanding what's really motivating everyone underneath the surface, then saying that back out loud to them and helping them to say, yes, that's what I mean. That's my vision. Yes, that's where we're headed. That's why we want to do this. And then that piece of it is really what helps us sort of lift out the soul. I would say both businesses and nonprofits, the process is actually the same. And both groups want to connect to why they're doing what they're doing. Because once you're able to connect why you're doing what you're doing, it helps you be more excited about it. It ends up being sort of this great sort of therapeutic process that we all go through, because every time you do it with a client, you're going through it with them. So you're getting to experience why they're doing it, their motivating factors, and helping to bring that out. But it inspires and encourages all of us because people are talking aspirationally about why they do what they do.
I love it. So you're able to tell what they do, but even more importantly, you're able to tell why they do it. Now, I'm also curious how your faith informs what you do. As a person of faith, how does that shape your work and how does that shape your company in general?
Well, several years ago, I read the book Love Does by Bob Goff and basically reevaluated the work that we were doing and really thought about we only want to work with missionally driven organizations. So organizations working to make the world a better place, no matter what form they're in. And so, we make jokes that we like sneak Jesus in there, sneaky Jesus, a little bit,
I
sneaky
like
Jesus. But I would say what we really try to do is just love on our people and love on our clients. We say all the time, like lead with love. How do we think about all of that? So I would say from a faith perspective, it's so integral to who I am that it just is part of our culture, whether or not people are necessarily sharing the exact same version of faith, but everyone at Minerva is a pretty soulful person. And so in those ways, we really align.
So you've mentioned that you have offices in some other parts of the country, and I'm always fascinated by the conversation around scaling. I think it's one of the hardest things in the world for any organization. You're nodding your head because you probably agree.
It's so hard.
It's so hard. So how do you, as a creative person, maintain some creative integrity to the process, but also delegate responsibility? Would you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, first of all, you can't scale the creative process. It is its own thing, and you have to just go through the creative process. Sometimes the creative process is instant, and sometimes it takes a really long time. As an impatient person, sometimes I'm like ready to be done and get to the other end, but that's not real. What I would say is at Minerva, we have been able to find incredible people, like incredibly talented, incredibly committed, incredibly creative people. And each person has a bent of creativity that's different from the others. And so collectively, we're working together to figure out how to make this the most compelling piece that we can, whether it's messaging or video or even a social graphic, all of those pieces together. How are we thinking about that? And each person has an important part to play in that. Sometimes it's taking all of us. Sometimes it's taking a few of us. So I would say we have high trust among our team and then also with our clients. So you can't scale the creative process. But what I would say is that you can bring around you and be aligned in what you think is important about the creative process and then trust that the process is going to work itself out.
So you mentioned the different mediums for communicating, whether that's a written piece or a video or a social media picture, perhaps. Each of those is essentially telling a story. What is it that makes a good story, and how do you tell those stories?
Well, when you think about a good story, it's something that is going to connect. Like it's connecting on some level, whether it's emotionally, mentally, spiritually, something that's compelling you to then do whatever it is the piece is supposed to be compelling you to do. Because some pieces are there to inform, some pieces are there to educate, some pieces are there to inspire. And how you think about all of that coming together is really the critical pieces of it. So a good story is something that is going to move the end user towards the result you hope the piece is going to create. And that's from our perspective because we're always working on things that are missionally driven. So we want people to feel inspired, to take action, to advocate, to connect with others. That's when we know something has done well.
Well, you're obviously having impact in telling those stories. A lot of your work has been recognized globally, and you've won a lot of awards. How do you keep your company grounded as it continues to receive these accolades and be recognized for your work?
Well, it's always fun to win awards, and
That's true.
That's awesome, right? That is really fun and meaningful, and is such a reflection, quite frankly, of the team that we have together, but also of the relationships we have with our clients, because they are collaborating with us in such a way that allows this work to really come through in such a compelling way. But when you win all the awards are wonderful, but we also have the honor of working on really large scale, important issues, projects, companies. And it is pretty humbling to always think about there's another person who was trafficked today or is struggling with homelessness. So when there's wins, like we know somebody got home, like found their way home, or we know that a woman graduated at one of our nonprofits and is now working and supporting her family. Those are the wins that are the most exciting because they're the ones that have the most lasting impact. And, at Minerva, we're a pretty close group. So while we're super excited about wins such as awards and things like that, we're also really excited about, somebody getting married or a new baby or someone got a new dog. Like those also are sort of part of what is fun and makes the work worthwhile.
I love to hear you talk about your professional approach because we're in the middle of this year of service as a church, and we've talked a lot about different opportunities for church members to volunteer with organizations in the community. But it occurs to me that as we're listening to you speak about your company, that we can also think about how to live our professional lives and how to run companies through this lens of service. And Minerva Consulting is a perfect example of a company that is operating within that realm of serving others. I'm also curious where you see Minerva in, let's say, the next 10 to 15 years. What's the bigger picture and what's the goal? Where's Minerva heading?
So I don't typically think in 10 to 15-year chunks. I tend to think in terms of my children and where they are in their life, quite honestly. So I would say, over the next 3 to 5 years, I hope that Minerva continues to grow and be able to do meaningful, impactful work with really wonderful, great clients. That's really the extent of our strategic business plan, is we really try to just keep over-delivering to all of our clients and having faith that we will find the best possible work for ourselves and our team.
Ashley, it's been a joy to have you on the podcast. We have one question that we ask every guest that comes on, and that question is this. Up until this point in your life, what is one thing that you wish someone would have told you?
That is a good question. I've had the privilege of having a lot of people engage with me and provide all kinds of great advice over my life. But the one thing I think I wish that I would have probably adhered to sooner would be that God made each of us just the way we are, and to lean into what is wonderful about us and lean into what is wonderful about others and just be satisfied with that.
That's a great word. That's a good thing for all of us to remember. Ashley, thank you again so much for your time and for sharing a little bit about the work that you do with Minerva. We appreciate it and are grateful for you being here today.
Thank you guys so much.
I find it inspiring to hear Ashley talk about that goal of drawing out the soul of the companies with which they work, whether that's a nonprofit organization or a for-profit company. I'm really fascinated by the process of digging down into the soul of the company and then telling the story of the soul, the why behind the what. And so to that end, we want to leave you with a verse from Proverbs that speaks exactly to that point, this process of discovering the things that are deep within us. Proverbs chapter 20, verse 5 says this: "The purposes in the human mind are like deep water, but the intelligent will draw them out."
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of More Than Sunday. If you like the podcast, please feel free to share it, go online and leave a comment, or give us a rating so that others might hear about us. We've got a new episode coming out every Wednesday, so make sure you also subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss our next episode. If you want to find out more about First United Methodist Church Richardson, you can find us online at fumcr.com, as well as on Facebook and Instagram. Special thanks to Ashley Elsey for joining us this week, and make sure you tune in next Wednesday when we have a conversation about prison ministry. Have a great week.